our next essential oil soap, we have in here our rose clay, our bentonite clay, and our bentonite and turmeric. And this is going to be our orange, lemongrass, and basil essential oil soap. All right, we've measured in a pound of batter for each one. This is our regular bentonite clay. You can see how much the orange colors it between the gray of the bentonite and the orange of the essential oil. It looks quite yellow grayish. Here is our rose clay, which should be just a dusty red, kind of a dusty rose color. And then in here, this is going to look really nice and bright because of the turmeric, but the turmeric will fade over time and it will be a pale kind of orangish yellow. I'm hoping that this will just give us kind of a bright citrusy look to our soap. All right, I've hand stirred these in, but I'm going to hit them with the blender and then we will pour them into our mold. Now, a trick to know whether or not you're getting air bubbles is when you run your machine, you should only hear the motor running and not hear splattering. If you hear splattering, that's air bubbles going into your soap. Now, have you ever burped a baby? Sometimes it takes a little time and patience to burp a baby. Same thing can happen with your stick blender. So to burp a stick blender, when you stick it down under, the bell holds air into it, and instantly you've now trapped a big air bubble into your soap. If I start blending now, it will whiz all of that air into my soap, causing lots of little bubbles. So we burp it. Now, the way to burp it is to tip it as far as you can on its side. Did you see that air bubble come up? Let me show you again. I'll move it closer. Let me get the spatula out of the way for just a second. So if I stick my stick blender down in here, and then I tip it to the side, you should see the air bubble come up. Now, that's not all you need to do to air. See? Did you see that second one come up? You need to keep tipping it as much as you can. And if you can't tip it all the way, sometimes shaking it or wiggling it will help it come out. But sometimes it takes more effort than you think it does. So for instance, with this, I'm holding it to tip it, but say I don't have that luxury. Say I have to hold my container up. There's our first burp. There's our second one. And if I wiggle it a little bit, the next one comes out. Now, if your head comes up and goes back down, you've probably trapped another one. And you need to be patient, make sure you try as hard as you can. Oh, there it came. With that one, I had to actually tap it on the ground. So tipping, tapping, and wiggling help get all of the air out from that bell, because the big one will come out first, but then there's always those little ones stuck at the very top of your bell. The other thing to watch out for is when blending, you'll see it starts to create a whirlpool effect and will create a hole right down to your blender. And that will introduce air into your stick blender as well. See, if I pulse it, I won't get that whirlpool effect. But if I hold my stick blender on for a long period of time, you'll see that hole open up and it introduces air into the soap. So we don't want to do that. If you do get air into your soap, just take a minute to stop, pound it out, swirl it around, get a good burp on the blender, get all the air bubbles out that you can. Let them kind of set, come to the surface, and then don't go near the surface for a while if you can. Just stick blend towards the bottom and then hand stir at the top for a little bit. And then get your spatula in there. And that kind of knocks out those air bubbles for you. And on to our rose clay. Oh, this smells so good. It smells like herbal tea. Like if your mom ever made you lemon and honey herbal tea, it smells very similar to that, with the orange and the lemongrass. And then the herbaceous notes from the basil. Yum. I think I have blended these enough that we will get a nice distinct drop swirl. So what we're going to do is put in most of this color here. I don't even know what to call this color because it's not really a color. It's just bentonite clay, which is kind of gray with that orange from the orange essential oil. And then I'm going to drop in, trying to do it in a thin stream, back and forth. And then I'm going to do the same with the rose, try to do a thin stream going back and forth. And that thin stream should also help get rid of some of the air bubbles that I got into the batter when mixing. It's really hard to not get air bubbles when you're mixing a small batch. And let's do some more of the orange. Back. I'm really excited about what this design will look like. The first batch I did, that first essential oil soap I did, the batter was really too thin for a drop swirl. But that's okay. It'll be interesting to see the difference between thinner and thicker batters in a drop swirl. So now we'll go back over with some of the bentonite, thin streams. Now these look like stripes on top, but when we cut them, they will hopefully look like drops on top of each other. And they should make a really neat, almost abstract art design on the inside. I love that vibrant orange of the turmeric. I really wish that it stayed that bright. It does still stay pretty, it's just not as bright. Okay. And now that my soap is getting closer to the top, I'm raising up my container higher so that the drops will go inside, because the closer my container is to the surface of the soap, like watch, if I'm close to the surface, it's just going to stay on the top. It won't actually drop inside. So if you want it to drop, you got to kind of hold it high to make it go all the way into the soap. And now we'll get our rose, and I'm going to hold that up high, try to push some of that bentonite drizzle down in there. All right, I'm going to scrape out my containers on here, and we will do a fun little swirl on the top. So now that we have all of our soap in here, I'm just going to pound it a little bit, allowing any last air bubbles to escape. Try to even it out all the way around. Then I'm going to take my skewer and run it right along the sides, and this just kind of scrapes off any of the soap that is above the soap level and pushes it back down in with the rest of the batter. And then we're just going to take our skewer and run it around. This just kind of makes a pretty design on the top. It's not necessary. This will actually be the thinnest part of the soap, but I just like the way it looks to have a little swizzle on there. So that is our nice orange, lemongrass, and basil soap. All right, so I apologize. My cutter is being used a lot, so it's not as clean as I like it to be, especially when filming. But here is our beautiful orange, lemongrass, and basil bar. And I think this one will be a little more vibrant than the last clay bar we did. I'm just going to line this up here, and we'll go ahead and cut it. Woo! There we go. Now this one I'm expecting a nice thick drop swirl. And we got it! I love it. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Absolutely beautiful. What a fun color. Now, like I said, unfortunately, the turmeric will lighten up and it will be more faint, a faint yellow, but I still love it. I think it's a happy looking soap, perfect for the scents that are in it. And there are clays in here, so again, we'll have that silky lather from a clay bar. I'm in love with it. All right, and I'll bring you back to show you once they're cleaned up and stamped.